Let's now look further on integration and controlling features of this integration discourse in European Union policies. Integration discourse as both product and producer of controlling institutional framework has been very important in some of the recent critical discourse studies. We can see that this integration discourse in European Union policies has been not only a result of controlling policies, it's a product of it, but the discourse as it has been initiated has further gone into various mechanisms of the controlling tools for European Union institutions. However, we need to admit that the recent policies of European Union and various suggestions and the critiques which have surfaced so far about these policies have compelled people and policymakers to integrate some kind of integration discourse in their policies, which may be supportive to immigrants apparently. But there are a lot many questions still to be answered about these integration discourses and the processes, policies which have been shaped and are still being shaped by the policymakers. For example, there can be discourses about why are these integration measures needed, why at all needed, if the government is frank and open in giving access to all people, why these are needed, what would be the nature of these measures, who would implement them, and what would happen if they are not implemented properly, and who would decide whose fault is this when it is not implemented. It may be the immigrant who is not following it, or it may be the government who is not, or various states who are not, or even institutions who are not facilitating the immigrants to follow them in a true letter and spirit. It is focused on the ways the documents examined by the researcher that documents justify the need of some kind of integration into European Union societies through a series of disjunctive and prioritizing argumentative moves. This is how there has been some kind of dichotomy in those dialogues. On the one side, they are urging immigrants to try and make deliberate efforts to integrate into European Union societies, but at the same time, they are not binding local peoples to accept them that wholeheartedly, and not binding local institutions to facilitate them as wholeheartedly as they do with their local citizens. The analysis by the researcher reveals that in their initial statements, all the documents present, policy documents of European Union, they present integration within a diunital framework that recognizes its dual nature. And the dual nature is based on a kind of two-way phenomena where there has been emphasis on obligations and rights. What kind of obligations immigrants have in order to become a member of European Union society, in order to integrate into European Union society, and what kind of rights they have while doing so. So it has been seen into two-way, and we can see that how these two have been pushed by these policies, and this can, according to the researcher, can be somehow politically exploitative. A strategy of disjunction has been employed as solving several tensions by emphasizing on one hand immigrants' responsibility for integrating. They are supposed to integrate into local societies by putting some special efforts, and on the other hand, host societies' right to marginalize those who don't. So host societies indirectly have been given a right not to marginalize those people who do not happily integrate with them. Specifically, the text various analysis of the text from multiple perspectives shows a kind of dichotomous and hierarchical framework where immigrants' economic rights are contingent upon their compliance with the cultural obligations of these European Union societies. So their economic rights, their growth, their professional growth is closely tied with their alignment with local cultural, socio-cultural traditions. Whereas the local people and the local institutions have not been bound by these policies, including media, political parties, individuals, state institutions. They are not bound by these policies to uh, facilitate them in the process of integration. Rather, it does not go beyond the term involvement, which other words means that these institutions should show involvement towards immigrants and should help them in integrating into societies, but it definitely is not binding on them. Whereas if we look at it closely in order to sum this argument up, we would see that obligations uh, of the immigrants to integrate into local European Union societies are binding, and most of their rights are related to their deliberate efforts to integrate into European Union societies and with their people. Whereas the involvement of local people stands out as attached to voluntariness and therefore not binding. So they are not bound by law, by any policy to facilitate immigrants in order to integrate into local societies. So that is a kind of dichotomy which Guillem clearly found in European Union policies.